How facing the fear of being seen transforms love and life. You know that feeling, right? The moment someone looks too closely and you panic a little inside. You've let someone in, maybe just a little too far, and suddenly there's this wave of fear rising in your chest. What if they see the parts of you you've tried so hard to hide? What if they judge you, or worse, leave? It's the fear of being seen, and it might be the very thing that's been holding your relationships, and your life, back. But what if the thing you're most afraid of is actually the doorway to deeper connection, greater freedom, and a more powerful version of you? This video is about that moment. That choice. And how stepping through it can change everything. You didn't grow up in a vacuum. You grew up in a world that taught you to hide. Maybe your vulnerability was dismissed, your emotions were too much for someone else to handle, or your needs were met with silence. Slowly, piece by piece, you learn to adapt. You put on masks, strong, successful, calm, funny, smart, independent. You performed. But inside, you started to feel hollow. And now, in your relationships, you want love, but you also fear it. Because real love requires real presence. Real nakedness. This is the fear of being seen, not just physically, but emotionally. Seen for your truth, your history, your contradictions. And in our hyper-curated digital age, where image is everything and filters blur our flaws, being seen feels more dangerous than ever. But here's the twist: not being seen is even more painful. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, "The greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all." And isn't that what happens when we hide? When you keep editing who you are for others, you lose track of who you really are. You trade authenticity for safety. But safety is not intimacy. In relationships, this fear can feel like a silent force pulling the strings. You keep conversations on the surface. You laugh when you want to cry. You dismiss compliments. You never let anyone all the way in, and then quietly wonder why love feels distant. And yet, the longing remains, to be fully known, fully met. Not for your performance, but for your truth. Philosopher Martin Buber offered a path out of this. He spoke of two ways of relating, I and I thou. In the I-it world, people are objects to be managed or admired. But in I thou, you meet another person with presence, soul to soul. That can only happen when you dare to show up fully. Not the polished version, but the real one. And here's where the confrontation begins. At some point, you realize that the fear of being seen is not a wall, but a mirror. It doesn't just show your wounds, it shows your power. The fear points exactly to the place where you are most tender, most alive, most in need of love. So instead of avoiding it, what if you turn toward it? What if, in the middle of a difficult conversation, instead of withdrawing, you stayed? What if, when someone asked how you were, you answered honestly. What if, instead of pretending to be fine, you said, "I'm scared, but I want to try"? Imagine how different your connections would feel if you did that. You would stop attracting relationships where you feel unseen. You would begin to trust that your truth is not too much. You would experience a kind of freedom that doesn't come from control, but from surrender. In truth, being seen doesn't make you weaker. It makes you whole. Think about it, the people who move you most deeply, their music, their words, their presence, are the ones who dared to reveal something raw and real. They let themselves be seen. And in doing so, they gave you permission to do the same. This is not just about love. It's about your entire life. When you stop hiding, your energy returns. Your creativity unlocks. Your relationships become more meaningful. You begin to feel peace, not because you're perfect, but because you're aligned. In a world obsessed with appearance, your truth becomes your revolution. And it's not just philosophers who knew this. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But you can't become that in isolation. You become that in relationship, in reflection, in the courage to be seen. So here's the invitation. Start with one moment. One breath. One truth. Let someone in. Let them see the part of you you're still ashamed of. Not for approval, but for freedom. Because every time you show your truth and it's met with love, a deeper part of you comes back to life. That's not just healing. That's power. If this spoke to something deep inside you, you're not alone. Subscribe to our channel for more grounded, human, and soul-centered content that helps you reconnect with yourself and with each other. You are not too much. You were just waiting for the moment you were brave enough to be seen. Maybe that moment is now.